So the first recipe we're going to do for the university cooking or the student cooking is a risotto with roasted veg. I'm trying to do recipes where you don't need loads of equipment or loads of ingredients, and the ingredients are simple and comparatively cheap. All right, but it is so important that you do your own cooking where possible. It's very easy to go to the kebab shop, fish and chip shop, Chinese, whatever. That would cost a lot more, and you know, it will be an issue ultimately with your health, because obviously we know lots of preservatives, lots of fat in those kind of dishes. It will be a problem. Okay, so this is, yes, it takes longer and it does take more effort. You've got to buy the stuff and you've got to cook it. Ultimately, it's a win-win situation. So what we do first of all then is actually roast the veg. It'll take the longest, about half an hour to roast the veg. So again, really any veg you fancy, it doesn't really matter. The harder veg is better to roast for kind of obvious reasons, otherwise it goes mushy. I did cheat, I bought a bag of butternut squash. Just so you know, I'm going to put it on a baking tray. So I'll move that here. Just so you know, so this cost, all the ingredients were just over £7. Now it seems a lot, but the quantity is going to make probably 7 portions. So it is about £1 a portion, I would say, and they're decent portions, all right, with lots of rice, lots of risotto, so lots of carbohydrates for slow release energy. So what I'm going to do is just cut up. I've got courgettes, aubergine, and butternut squash, and sweet potato. Actually, there's a mixture in here, but it's whatever you fancy. Really, it doesn't actually matter. You can put mushrooms. You could do onions. Loads of things, right? So when you're cutting the veg, try and do it roughly the same size. I don't got to be precise, but roughly the same size. Okay, so make it fairly chunky, because obviously when you roast veg, it will shrink as well. I'm just going to show you one. I will do them all, but I will just show you one just simply for speed. So that's going on a baking tray as well. And then the aubergine. Now, aubergine may not be some people's favourite. It is a really nice veg. It absorbs flavours really well. So just take the top off, and then all you do is just slice down. You want to make squares just like we've done with the courgette. Right, for example, let's move that over here. In strips, turn, and loosely, you see, whoops, loosely similar size and shape. All right, the shape doesn't matter, but the size does matter. Okay, so once it's all chopped, which is not yet, but it will be, but I'll just do it just for speed. So this is all done. We then put on some salt and pepper, some salt, some pepper, put on some oil. Do you know what people sort of say, oh, it could be extra virgin or whatever, oil. It doesn't actually matter at all. The oil will help speed up the cooking. All right, it'll take much longer if you don't put oil on. You don't want much, just want a drizzle. I've turned on the oven to nearly its highest setting, but 220, which is really high, but because we want a nice kind of crusty edge on the veg. Okay, so that's going to go in, and then that'll take half an hour, but we'll make the risotto as well. So in about 20 minutes, I'll start making the risotto. Okay, so the veg is roasting in the oven. Like I say, take about 20-25 minutes. You need to make sure you don't overcook it or it'll burn. With about 10 minutes to go, you start making the risotto. So literally all I've done is chop an onion, and I put the onion in with some oil. Again, hasn't got to be extra virgin or virgin oil or whatever, oil is fine. Makes no real odds. And then we're going to fry the onion until the onion is slightly soft. And while that's happening, what I've also done is I've made some stock, which literally just is a pre-done stock cube. It's one of these jelly type of stock cubes, in with with hot water from the kettle, and then that's that. And we will later, to flavour the risotto, use some pesto, just bought pesto. Now, this was £2, but there's a lot in here, so it's pine nuts, parmesan, and basil. If you bought those ingredients to make the pesto, it actually costs a lot more than buying the jar in this instance. Also, I won't be putting extra cheese on the risotto, because parmesan is quite expensive, or cheese generally is quite expensive. So everything we need is really in here. Okay, so once the onion is slightly softened, important to soften and not brown it, otherwise you're going to get brown bits in the risotto and it'd be a bit kind of crunchy. Not the end of the world, but So let's move this out of the way. Now the way to work out his risotto rice, and to be honest, to get a decent result, you do need risotto rice. There's different sorts of risotto rice. This is the standard one. It works out about a decent handful per person. Now again, cooking needs to be fluid in the sense of, I'm going to do basic amounts, but things like the veg, if you want less veg, more veg, different veg, you know, vary it. Less onion, more onion. It's, you know, it's what cooking's about. I'm going to put a few handfuls in, just because I'm making a little bit more. About 2.5. 2.5 will be enough for kind of 2 very generous portions. All right, probably too much to eat, really. What you now do, which is a little bit unusual, is that you fry the rice. Only briefly, but what the idea is that you actually start frying the rice and you coat the rice in oil. Now, the key thing with the risotto, give that a little, is you put the liquid in bit by bit. You don't splosh it all in and then do it. You do bit by bit, and you stir it constantly. As the liquid is absorbed, you add a bit more liquid, and when you stir that, once that's absorbed, you add a bit more liquid until the rice is cooked. That's about 10 minutes, could be a bit less, but we'll see. So if I show you the first bit, then we stop, and then I come back when it's nearly done. So fry that a little bit, not till it's brown, but literally just a coat. Give it a quick fry, coat it in the oil. That's good, you want it to do that. Right, what I'm going to do is literally just stand here and stir this until it's absorbed. Now, again, heat regulation is important, all right? If it's boiling like mental and the liquid's going too quick, then turn it down. If it's just sitting there looking at you, it's not hot enough. Somewhere in the middle, right? I'm using electric, I'm on number 4. So just turn it down to number 4, actually. Okay, so I'm gonna wait a second, just to show you. What I mean by the liquid going, obviously there's liquid in there and it won't completely vanish, but what will happen is it will be so that when you stir it, it kind of starts to stick a little bit, and it's obviously not enough liquid in there. So at this point, as you can see that? So there's liquid in there, of course, but it's not wet liquid, if that makes sense. I'm going to put a little bit more in, and I'm going to stir. As that absorbs, add more, add more. I'll be back when this is nearly done. Okay, so as you can see then, this has been on for about 8 minutes or so. You can see the thickness of that. Now, risottos are not meant to be dry, but they're not meant to be soaking wet either. All right, so if you can see that, there's decent amounts of moisture in there, so it's kind of wet but not wet. It kind of moves, if that makes sense, like wet mashed potato, I guess. I know it's done because it's more about the rice. The Italians call it al dente, which means to the bite. So in here, if I bite, just taste some, it is soft, but there's a very tiny bit of texture just in the middle. Now at that point, that's done. All we're now gonna do is add some of the pesto, about a tablespoon, but it depends on the quantity. Again, this is for 2 people. Pesto lasts about 3 weeks in the fridge. So obviously you make this again and you don't have to waste that. So stir the pesto in. Now remember, the pesto has cheese in, pine nuts, so remember that if you've got a nut allergy, and Parmesan cheese as well. So it's fairly strong powered. We need some salt and pepper in there. Salt and pepper in there, definitely. So, okay, so that's the risotto done. All you do now is put it together. So, risotto's done. The roasted veg is done. Right, so it's all there. Now, just so you know, this freezes really well. You can literally do it in portions, right? So you can literally get a plate or a container of some kind and put portions and freeze it. Just defrost it, microwave it. You wouldn't tell the difference if you haven't made it fresh, really. You can either just put the risotto in or put the veg in the risotto and mix it up, whatever works for you. But I'm just gonna make it look a bit pretty. I'm gonna put some risotto. Just again, notice, see how it kind of sits. It's wet, but not wet. Okay, so risotto on there. I'm gonna put a nice selection of the veg on top. If you have any Parmesan, or you can stretch the Parmesan, of course, put some on the top, that'd be amazing. So veg, A little bit of the aubergine as well. And there we go. That plate of food is literally about £1. Okay, you certainly couldn't buy anything of that quality and that flavour. There we go. So that's pesto risotto with roasted veg. See you all soon.